Well, good morning. I'm Justin Ford. I'm the pastor here at Oakdale. It's so good to see you and to be before you today. And as has already been mentioned, today is kind of a special day. Now, if you happen to be a person who the first two times you've been to Oakdale were last Sunday and this Sunday, you may come away wondering, does that guy ever preach? Now, there's people who've been here for a long time who wonder, does that guy ever preach? But I will tell you this, the summertime is kind of a different time. We have a lot of special services and different services, unique times, and today is one of those. And if you're just, I know some of you are just dying to hear me preach. I mean, you just can't wait to hear me preach. Right? And so next Sunday morning, I promise you, as with everything that I have in me, as long as God is willing and another creek doesn't rise, then we'll be here together and I'll be preaching. You'll get more of me than you ever wanted. And a lot of times when I've missed a week or two of preaching, I like to preach for 20 or 30 minutes longer than normal. So just be careful what you pray for. That's all I would tell you this morning. As I said, today is a special day because we are going to present to you a candidate for our new minister to children this morning, and that's a pretty exciting time for us. We have been about 9 months without a children's minister, and we've been very blessed to have a lot of people who have been taking on responsibility and filling in gaps and just really helping us out. And all during that time, behind the scenes, myself as well as other leaders in the church have been seeking and searching and interviewing and going through that process. Let me tell you, it is just the funnest process you've ever heard of, and it's important. It's so important, and we recognize that. We've been really focused on that. We have tried to keep you up to date over these months. There have been a time or two where we have had someone that we introduced to you as a potential candidate, but each time we felt like just the situation wasn't quite right. And so today we are finally at the point where we're ready to share with you a candidate that we bring before you as a church. And the way we're going to do this is the following way. In just a moment, I'm going to invite Susan Munson, who's our candidate, to come and sit with me, and we're going to kind of go through an interview time. We asked over the last couple of weeks for you to submit questions that you would like to hear answered or things that you're interested in knowing about for Susan. I appreciate everybody who did that for us over the last week, and you asked some great questions. I don't think there are any questions that she hasn't already answered during the 6 different interview times she's been through over the past month or so. And so she is going to be able to come and share with you a little bit about her background and her heart and her family and her story and all of those kind of things. And you get a chance to kind of know her a little bit through this time. Then, when that time is over, we're going to enter into what we call a special business meeting. And let me just say this to you who are guests. If you're a guest this morning, if you're not a member or a regular attender of Oakdale, when we enter into that special business meeting, of course, you are welcome at that point. You're welcome to leave. But here's what I would encourage you, especially if you're kind of interested in Oakdale, if you're investigating Oakdale, if you're kind of checking Oakdale out, thinking this might be a place for you or your family, there is a lot to learn about a church in their business meetings, okay? I mean, I'm not kidding. You learn a lot about who the church is and what they believe about God and how they feel about one another and their leaders through a business meeting. And this will probably be the best business meeting you've ever been to, okay? Because it will be short and it will be simple and it will be over before you know it. So this would be a good way to get your feet wet anyway, okay? But at the time when we entered into business meeting, we will make it available to you. If you'd like to slip out, you'll be welcome to do that. In the meantime, we want to take this opportunity and introduce to you Susan and get to know her. So Susan, I'm going to ask you to come right now. This is Susan Munson. You guys welcome her, please, if you would. Susan, I cannot promise you that that's the most comfortable bench or chair, and you're really tall, a lot taller than me. Let me make sure it's turned on here.
I don't have my glasses on. I can't see it. Oh, thanks.
There you
I was
go.
going to say I'm tall. This is great. It's
All right.
the only time in my life I've ever been tall.
for about 20 minutes. You're
20
going
minutes.
to have
Okay,
that.
great.
You're going to have that opportunity. Now, Susan comes to us this morning, and as I said, we've had an opportunity to visit with her and interview her and talk to her at length over the past weeks and month. And Susan has a very unique background just in terms of Oakdale and kind of her experiences and where she's been and what she's done and how that meshes with who we are as a church. And I think you'll probably get a pretty good sense of that. And let me just start with this. And we're going to actually put these questions on the screen behind me just so you can see them. You can be clear about what I'm asking her and what she's answering. And we just want to make it good for you. Okay, so we're going to start with this. Start by telling us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, your church background before you got into ministry, and your education. Let's start with that.
Okay, well, first, thanks for having me this morning. And I'll tell you, it's been about a month-long process to get to this point. Six interviews or so. And know that your pastor and the deacons and the children's team have been just amazing in this process, and there's no question that they've asked that I've been like, yeah, I'm really comfortable answering that. So know that they've been diligent on their part as well. So I grew up here in Edmond. I was born at Edmond Hospital. My parents also grew up here in Edmond. Were born at Edmond Hospital. My parents live in the same house they've lived in. My parents have been married for 35 years or something. I went to school here in town. Started out at Ida Freeman, and then to Central, and then to North. So go Huskies. But I do have a 9th grader this year who's going to Memorial, so I had to wear a Bulldog shirt the other day, and I don't know how I feel about that. But I grew up at a little church just up the road, directly up Hefner Road, called Lone Star Baptist Church. So back in the day, Lone Star, and when this was Witcher, were kind of sister churches. So I'm very familiar with what used to be Witcher Baptist Church. Went there. My mom, I was talking to my mom the other day. I was like, Mom, I don't remember exactly when I was saved. And she said, January 21st. And I was like, well, oh, okay, cool. Do you know what the year was? 1989. I was like, oh, okay, thanks, Mom. So saved January 21st, 1989. It was also the day we left for my great-grandmother's funeral to go to Ohio, and I think that's how she connects that, but I'm not sure. Maybe she's just a genius, I don't know. Went to Falls Creek, like everybody else, and decided when I was 17, I felt the call at Falls Creek to serve God. And I thought, okay, great. So I'd already committed to go to OU to be to study nursing there, and I thought, oh, this is the perfect thing for me. I can serve God through medicine. This will be great. Continued on through OU and graduated and worked about a year as a nurse, and just really decided I was not the way I was supposed to be serving God. So, Boomer Sooner.
Yes. All right, good. So tell us a little bit about your family, and you have 5 children. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your family. Tell us about how they kind of feel about coming to Oakdale. All these strange and unfamiliar people.
Okay. Well, my kids are like normal, ministers' kids or pastors' kids. They go, they're like, Mom, are you serious? But they come, and they go where I go, and they're very used to it. They don't know. I asked Kaya the other day. She's my oldest. She's 14. I said, Kaya, how do you feel about moving churches? And she was like, well, it's kind of normal, right, Mom? I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, bye. So my husband, Donnie, he's not here this morning. We have one child who is not feeling very well. They will be here eventually, in the next 15 minutes probably. But we put up a pool in the backyard. And I've got one child that's extremely allergic to mosquitoes, and she got eaten alive by mosquitoes yesterday. So I have our oldest child is 14. She'll be 15 in September. She's starting as a freshman at Memorial in the fall. She's going to do color guard, and she does choir. And then we have he'll be 12 on Tuesday, and he's in 7th grade at Cimarron. And then we have a 2nd grader. Her name's Gracie, and she's 7. And then we have twin boys who are 3.5, and they have red hair and blue eyes. And if you see them, beware. They're very friendly, but they are also very ornery. So, and they all seem to really enjoy coming. My oldest is, a little bit harder because she's connected at Peace where I where I was serving. And so, but other than that, just the transition is good. And she got to meet Drew last week, which was kind of a crazy week to stop him and say, hey, could you meet my daughter really fast? But she was very nervous. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it.
And as you guys can imagine, bringing a family into a church, it's one thing for a minister who is surrendered to ministry and called to ministry, but when you're bringing your family to a new church, that's a pretty scary thing. And so I would ask you guys just to keep that in mind, in the days ahead as they try to make that transition and as they try to find their place as well. That can be pretty tough. Susan, you mentioned that you, I think you said that really kind of felt a call to ministry while you were at Falls Creek, which is something that, that we hear that a lot. That's a great place for God to speak to your heart and show you what He wants from you. Tell us a little bit more about your call to children's ministry, and how do you think that calling has impacted the way that you minister to kids? Because you were a teenager, is that right, at that point? So talk a little bit about that and how that's impacted you as a children's minister.
It was Thursday night, which I think is Cry Night, right, at Falls Creek, right? Yeah. And I just really felt called. So, of course, you walk down to the front, and I thought, oh, this is the end of it. It'll just be done. Great, wonderful. And then my husband and I and our oldest child started attending Henderson Hills Baptist Church, where they have a policy, if your kids are in children's ministry, then you do something there. And so I started volunteering my time as I think they call it a shepherd, but it's like a Sunday school teacher with the 3-year-olds. And for just a few months, and then they said, Susan, you're really great at this. Is this something you've ever thought about doing with your life? And I was like, I did answer a call from Jesus, but you know what? I'm a nurse, so that's totally fine. That's what I do. And they were like, oh, okay. So then a few months later, after they were like, Susan, if you're really interested, we are very interested in pursuing a relationship with you, working for us. And so I said, okay, I'll think about it. And then within about 6 months, I had decided I could probably do it because it was just like 8 hours. 8 hours isn't that long, That's easy. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then Henderson Hills moved churches, and it became just a really large church, and it became kind of a little harder to connect and things like that. And I had a girlfriend who worked at New Covenant, which is a United Methodist Church. And so I went over there. Now I'm getting ahead of myself on questions, so I'm going to stop. But I think being called to ministry is different than serving in ministry. 2 reasons. One, if you are called to serve in ministry, this morning I peeked into one of the Sunday school classes, and then having a servant's heart was brought up, and I have a servant's heart. I never prayed to have a servant's heart. But I do have a servant's heart, and the difference is if you have a servant's heart and you're called to ministry, it's not a job. It's a lot of fun. I get to come to work and play with kids and teach them about Jesus. It doesn't really get any better than that. As to where if you're not called and you're making an assumption that this is what I want to do with my life, it's a little bit more difficult to where it's just harder. So.
All right, so you mentioned Henderson Hills. That was really your first opportunity to be a staff member and to officially be a part of a church like that. How big was your responsibility when you were at Henderson Hills?
Well, I worked 8 hours. I was paid for 8 hours of work. And one thing you should know about ministry is no matter how many hours you are paid to work, it kind of never stops. Just because if you see someone at Walmart and they're like, oh, Miss Susan, oh my gosh, hi. And then it could be like an hour and a half. And then my husband's standing with the basket like, Lord, help me. Please stop talking. But he just waits for me. So then anyway, I started at Henderson Hills and I was paid 8 hours, which turned into by the time I left, there was a 20-hour position.
And how many kids did you include?
When I started at Henderson Hills, there were probably like 120 kids in the age, in the children's ministry part that I worked in. When I left, it was probably triple that. When they bought that new building, they just boomed. It was great.
So a lot of kids in your
Absolutely,
ministry area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I went to New Covenant. They called me and asked me to come out and interview for a job that they just kind of made up. So I went over there and interviewed, and again there I had about probably 75 when I started and probably more like 150 when I left. And then I took a little sabbatical for about 3 months after I had the twins. They were emergency C-section and needed some NICU time, and so I just needed to be a mom for a little bit. And then I had a buddy who works at Peace Preschool and said, we have this great opportunity for youth and family ministry. I think it'd be really up your alley. And I was like, oh, but you said youth, so No, thank you, because I do children. So anyway, I've been there 3.5 years. It's been a great experience. There I've got about 80-ish kids, but remember that that's youth and family, so it's birth all the way to like 25. So
am I picking up on a cycle here of God saying, you need to do this, and then you say no, and then
Right.
eventually you end up
Right, that's what I do. Right.
5 years down the road and you can do it. Okay.
That's what I do.
All right, I just want to make
I'm
sure
getting
I
a
was
little
clear
better,
on
though,
that. All right,
in my
that's
older
good.
age.
That's good. Tell us, how would you describe your approach to children's ministry? We talked a little bit about kind of this idea of what are you trying to accomplish, why are you trying to accomplish it, and how. Talk about your approach to children's ministry.
Well, what I'm trying to accomplish is obviously building a community. Just because you have a paid staff person that's kind of in charge of the children's ministry doesn't mean that I can win every heart to Jesus. My job is to facilitate and make it easier for you guys, the body of Christ, to lead all these kids to Jesus and show them a godly walk and how do you love like Jesus. And that's what I do. I just love like Jesus. I just love children. I just really do. I don't know what else wrong. How are you going to accomplish it? I have my glasses on.
What are some of the important things to you in terms of the environment that you're trying to create in children's ministry, whether it's small groups or big groups? What kind of environment are you trying to make there?
Well, since I've never witnessed what happens on a Sunday morning other than this morning, Sunday school looked really fun. I've had some time to go over the curriculum. I met with Kelly Smith this week on Wednesday morning so we could kind of talk about what it looks like, why do we do things the way we do them, is there like a good reason, or is it, the what is it, the always answer of, well, this is just the way we've always done it. And so...
we never say that around here,
okay,
by the way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We never
right.
say that.
Okay. So my, big picture idea is, that children's church becomes something more. It's a great time to have fun, but it's also an awesome time because, a lot of kids don't come to Sunday school. A lot of kids are just that children's church hour. So it's a great time to be able to introduce new concepts and new songs and have small groups and make awesome small group leaders that can travel with them. So when I have my 5th graders leave me and go to youth, it becomes more that they're taking their small group leader with them so that they have that community built and that the relationship with whomever's leading that group. So
Okay. There's something I want to hit on before we move past it. When I asked you about your experience in a couple of different churches, and one of the experiences you've had was at New Covenant. And at New Covenant, you were involved in the process of planning and designing a new children's facility. Mm-hmm. And of course, as you guys know, that's something that we're working on right now and in the middle of. And so Susan brings, again, kind of some experience to that maybe we wouldn't otherwise have. And so that's kind of exciting to know that you've got that background, because that's something that we can lean on. What are some of the ways you mentioned community, you've mentioned relationships? Those are key words here at Oakdale. If you've been around for a while, you know that this is something we talk about a lot. What are some ways you've built relationships with children and parents and church members and prospective families in the past? How do you build relationships?
Because I'm friendly. No, I'm just kidding. I tend to just be over friendly so that I can get to know people. I do have a servant's heart, and that just makes me want to know more about someone. So if you say, oh, this is Melissa, and that's all you ever say to me, I'll never be able to put her kids with her or her spouse or her parents or anything like that. But if you said, okay, this is Melissa, these are her kids, this is her husband, these are her parents, which luckily I know them, so thank you for that. It makes it easier for me. And then I can say, then it gives me something to grasp onto. So when I see Melissa on Sunday morning, I can say, oh my gosh, did Lydia have fun at Falls Creek? And then I'm building a relationship with her because I'm invested in her. We have a group at Peace where I was serving that they're called Prime Time, and they have lunch once a month, and it's the older generation, like that 65 to older. And I have lunch with them I was having lunch with them once a month. And let me tell you something about those people. Those people are the heart of your church because they have more information than you can ever imagine. I mean, really, it's just amazing. So I don't, I'm not just going to invest in the people who have children in children's ministry. I like to know everybody. Like I said, I grew up in a really small church that everybody knew everybody, and I still am in contact with a lot of them, and so I just enjoy getting to know people in general.
Talk about what maybe your most confident areas of children's ministry are. What are the things that really get you excited, that you really feel good about, that come really naturally to you in terms of children's ministry?
I've been doing children's ministry for over 10 years, so I feel like most areas are pretty easy for me. I'm pretty outgoing, and I'm kind of a natural leader. I enjoy Sunday school. I think Sunday school is probably, in my opinion, probably the most important time you get with your kids, because it's one-on-one time in a small group where you've got one or two teachers that you can connect with, and they know these kids and they're invested in these kids. So I enjoy Sunday school. Children's church is super fun to me too. I think it's great to be able to have a lot of fun, a lot of safe fun, no broken arms. And then be able to bring it down and give a really good mini sermon almost to say, this is what Justin's talking about. How can I make it appropriate for my kids too?
Okay, so then on the flip side, what are maybe areas where you have to seek out the most help and support? Because we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. So what would be the flip side of that for you? I'm
a doer. So if I say to myself, Susan, in your office right now, this is real, by the way, there are boxes of VBS stuff. Okay, I wasn't here for, I did get to come in and enjoy VBS one night, but I wasn't in charge of VBS. I had nothing to do with it. My brain says, you should take those back and get your money back so you can put it back in budget. Okay, well, I didn't have anything to do with it. It's really not my job. So I'm going to need help in making sure that I am spreading the work out and not just doing because I'm here.
All right, so here's a question that someone sent to us this week that I thought was really interesting, and just a really good question. It says this: some minister spouses are close partners with them in ministry, and some aren't. Is your husband more likely to be a partner in children's ministry, or is he more likely to look for other ways to serve in the church?
My husband likes children. Obviously, we have a few. He likes little children, little babies. My husband has, in the past, helped me anytime I have directly asked him. I know, okay, wives, you know how this goes. Babe, will you please help me by taking out the trash, right? And then he says, I'll take out the trash, and then he takes out the trash. But if I never said, would you take out the trash would still be sitting there. So here's what I would encourage you, people, members of the church, to do. Task him. Ask him a question. Find out what he likes to do, and then he will do that. He works at the Capitol building, so as a maintenance, blah, 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 something. There's a lot of words that go along with it that I don't know anything about. So anything that, like, building-wise, he's your guy. Children's ministry, if I ask him, he'll do it. So.
All right, good. What are your thoughts on recruiting team members for children's ministry?
Well, right now, I don't even actually have a list of who's on the children's team, other than I know Kelly Smith is. So my idea,
Kelly's actually the only person who works in children's ministry right now.
You're funny.
I'm totally kidding. Sorry about that. She's going to need to develop a sense of humor as well.
So my idea behind that is I'm going to have an awesome group of people who really know other people in the church, and who know what they're good at serving. Because I never want to ask anyone to serve that doesn't have a heart for serving in that. You don't like children. I probably don't want your help doing something with kids, but maybe you have great handwriting and you like to write postcards. That's for me. I always have postcards to write. So I'm just going to really rely on, the people of the church to be able to tell me, like, yes, this is what I like to do. No, I don't like to do that. And kind of go from there. And then maybe ask people, do you like children? If you see me coming, don't run away, though. Just say, oh, I don't really like them, or I do.
All right. Something that you've said is that you don't have to feel gifted specifically in children's ministry to be able to contribute to children's ministry. And so I think that's an important part of this, is that a lot of different people can serve in a lot of different ways. How do you balance fun which is something obviously that, our kids want and are excited about, with an environment that is safe, but also conducive to learning. And is that important to you? And if so, why?
It is important because I don't want to fill out any accident reports, ever. The other part of that is if it becomes unsafe, then it's not fun, because then I have to put my mom face on and find your mom, the kid's mom who's acting inappropriately, and then it's just not fun for anyone because now we have a mom in the room. It's like, oh crap. So I like to have a lot of fun and play a lot of super fun games, and I can tell you that working with youth and family the past 3.5 years has really broadened my games, what games I know how to play and can play and that are safe and fun for me to play as well. And I like to, I know that there's lots of different ways that people bring kids, like from, a 10 to like a 2. But I like to use, I do praying hands. Why do we fold our hands to pray? So our hands don't wander and bother someone else. And why do we close our eyes when we pray? And so our eyes don't wander and we can really focus on what the words we're saying to Jesus and what Jesus has to say back. So I tend to use that to bring them down.
Great. What kind of methods do you use for communication with parents, other workers, etc.?
I like emails. I like postcards. I like text messages, phone calls, face-to-face, everything.
Is communication an important part of children's ministry?
Well, yes, because if I don't know what's happening, how do you know what's happening?
Okay.
And if I never tell you, then I'm anticipating that probably not going to be very good.
Okay. All right. Here's a question that was asked to us. How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with stress? We'll start with that.
I have 5 children, so I tend to be pretty mellow on it. Like, it takes quite a lot to get my goat or, get me doing anything at home. I just simply walk away from them. I'm like, oh, okay, bye. And I can go upstairs and take a breather and come back down and deal with the situation then. It just really takes a lot. If someone asked me this morning, are you nervous? No. Maybe I should be, but I'm not.
All right, good. How about conflict? How do you deal with conflict?
That's a person-by-person basis. I have a 7th grader who is going to be a 7th grader who's got an auditory processing issue, and so I deal with him way different than I deal with my oldest child, who's totally type A in all honors classes and all of that, and to where my son, that's not going to happen, and we just have to work from the ground up, and I'm walking into like, I know nothing about anyone, so I'm just really going to have to rely on some of the volunteers who've been here and working with the kids, and then be able just to build on that with them.
Okay, and how about discipline issues specifically?
I tend, I think I've told whoever's been in on any of my interviewing process, I have lots of friends, and I tend to tell them the first time is usually like okay, I'm all done now, please stop. Never going to call your kid out by name from the stage. I again could put my mom eyes on and kind of dart them, and they normally stop. And then the next phase I run into normally is giving them a task, or I make them my buddy. I'll use my son. My son's Caden. He gets a little antsy when he does stuff. So in that case, I just normally say, Caden, could you do me a favor by, and then I give him a job of something that I'm already working on that he can do with me. And then, if we have to go further than that, then that's just after church, hey, Justin, can you call me tomorrow, or can I meet with you sometime this week? I want to talk to you about a couple things. Just because, kids are kids. They're excited, and it's all exciting, and sometimes we just get a little too excited or a little too anxious, and we just need, and then I'm just going to say, listen, Justin, your kid was a little riley today. Is there something that you guys do at home that I can do here to help it make it a little bit better?
Okay, great. What would you say is the hardest thing for you in children's ministry, and what's the hardest thing for your family?
For my family, it's that on Sunday morning, I am not your mother. I cannot help you get ready for church. I cannot brush your teeth. I cannot make sure you have clothes picked out. If you did not bring your clothes downstairs the night prior, you are on your own.
I'm guessing you've had this conversation before, it sounds like, right? This is not the first time you've ever thought of that.
Last night. I said I cannot brush your teeth in the morning. So for my kids, it's just that I can't be mom because all the kids in the whole place are, oh, Miss Susan, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you, and luckily all my children know that, that's going to happen and they're okay with it.
What about for you personally in children's ministry? What's hard?
I think for myself, it's finding time to worship or be fed. We get busy, and any minister can probably tell you this, or pastor can tell you this, that we get really busy and caught up in the work behind putting on Sunday morning, that sometimes it could be 2 or 3 weeks, and then I realize, have I seen the inside of the sanctuary? No. Okay, and so I am going to work diligently to find a way to do that on a regular basis because I'm not going to do anyone else any good if I'm not being fed. I can't feed without being fed, so.
All right, so, and then this is the last question on my list here, and I'm going to twist it up just a little bit, ask it just a little bit differently. As you prepare to come to Oakdale, as you prepare to take on a new ministry, what are you excited about? What are you excited about in a new opportunity with new faces and new kids and new circumstances? What gets you excited?
I think the most exciting thing for all children's ministers probably is just watching the moment on the kid's face when they meet Jesus for the first time. I mean, a lot of times we sit in church, and I sat in church for, we'd never had children's church when I was a little kid in the 80s. You sit in church and, you never really feel Jesus. And the first time that, this 6-year-old kid, feels Jesus, and they look at you like, oh my gosh, it just happened. And then you realize, okay, we're getting somewhere. We're moving in the right direction. We're winning hearts. We're winning souls for Jesus. And I think that's the most exciting thing for me.
Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else that you would want to share with us? Any last words you want to give this morning? All right. I appreciate you. Thank you for answering questions and doing that for us. And here's what we're going to do at this point is I'm going to have my wife, Christine, is going to take Susan, and we're going to dismiss right now and enter into a special business meeting, okay? I want to thank you guys for being a part of our process this morning, for all those who have been involved in the process over the past 9 months, on leadership levels, just in prayer, and also in support. Don't forget people like Kelly Smith, who have been taking charge of things, Drew Ray and Mark Johnson, who've been leading live worship. A lot of different people who have stepped in and filled in and done a lot of things. Thank you for being a part of that. And as we have voted this morning, the vote, believe it or not, was unanimous, which I told Susan, I didn't even get close to a unanimous vote whenever you guys brought me as your pastor, so I'm a little jealous. Bottom line is this. Let me introduce you to Susan Munson, our new children's minister.